Recording now. So, hi everyone. I'm Deborah. I have here with me my colleagues, Catherine, Larissa, and Melissa. We are here to do a presentation on gender imparity. We are all Master in Entrepreneurship students at National College of Ireland. So first of all, I'd like to give you a little background, a little context why we decided to do this presentation. So in one of our classes, the gender imparity topic was brought up. We had some discussion on it, and this made us realize that despite being a massive problem that has been a massive problem for centuries, there is still people that are not fully aware of gender imparity as an issue and the impact that it has in the society. So as part of the problem, we want to be here today, the part of the solution. And we are going to present to you the causes of this gender imparity, the impact that it has in the society, some stats on countries that we chose based on the nationalities that we have in our class, and also some recommendations to tackle this issue. So as I mentioned, the main problem that we could identify is gender imparity. And after some research, after reading a lot, we could point out that patriarch social system is the main reason that sustain gender imparity, because it results in lack of opportunity for women, gender pay gap, and more unpaid domestic labor for women. And patriarchy is defined as a social system where men's ideas and actions dominate, oppress, and exploit women. Just to be crystal clear here, we are not saying that there is a conspiracy of males against females, that men are the problem. We are saying that this social system is the problem because it also oppresses men, but this is another discussion for another presentation. So focusing here on gender imparity. We know that history and culture play a very important part in ourselves, in our story, but this is very important to highlight. Despite all the difference that cultural aspects and historical aspects can bring to us, despite the ethnical, geographical, or linguistic difference, all women around the world will face at some point the same problems and the same feelings of suppression and depravedness. Of course, it's going to change for country to country. The levels are different, but all of us is going to face it at some point in our lives. And the countries that are affected the most by the patriarchy are the ones that are classified as underdeveloping and developing ones. So we can say that the society is ruled by the needs of white men. And because of that, because they have the control of cultural and social institutions, the reality is also constructed according to their perspectives and their views. And this is fundamental, this is essential to keep the patriarchy as a social system, because having men in strategic positions, like in corporations, government, military, state of bureaucracy, and etc., is exactly what keeps this social system alive for now and have been for so many years, so many centuries. Here we have the patriarch cycle that was proposed by German. So the cycle starts with this rigid sexual division of labor, that some roles are specific for men and some roles are specific for women. And because of this division, this rigid division based on our gender, women are seen as the ones responsible for housework and childcare. And because they have to deal with this paid domestic labor, they are forced to opt to go for low-paid jobs and or part-time jobs. And it reinforced the gender gap because it kind of justify because women don't have as much time available as men. It's kind of okay, and quotation mark here, it's kind of okay for them to be underpaid, and these reinforce the gender pay gap. And because they don't make as much profit as the men, it kind of also makes it reasonable that women are the ones to stay at home and deal with this paid domestic labor. And then we have the gender gap life cycle that's pretty much the same as the patriarch cycle. It starts with the social and cultural norms that impact the confidence, aspirations, and choice of career women. So then when we go to the workforce, they have to deal with culture and conditions of the workplace, unconscious bias, and the way that the career are assessed, the career progression are assessed, which promotes female leadership gap, pay gap, and start the cycle all over again. And as we can see here for the arrows, many of these aspects impact in each other. We are going to go a little bit further in details on some of these topics. So the effect of the patriarchy in the society, according to Albee, we have that patriarchs composed by 6 main structures: household, paid work, patriarchal state, male on female violence, relations in sexuality, and culture. Of course, all of this, each of this structure will have a different impact on the gender imparity. But when we focus on the first two, we have, as a result, segregation or exclusion of women from some types of job in the labor market. The tech field is one example of that, predominantly composed by men. We have, as a result as well, unpaid labor work performed mostly by women, as I mentioned before, childcare and housework, devaluation of women's work, and gender pay gap. And we used one report here a lot, that's the Global Gender Gap report. And this report highlights that the gender parity will not be achieved for the next 9 to 9.5 years. It's almost a century. And when it comes in terms of economic context, that is one of the dimensions analyzed by this report, the parity will not be achieved in the next 257 years. And talking about the global gender gap, we have the index that composed the report. And this index is composed by 4 dimensions. That's economic participation and opportunity, educational attainment, health and survival, and political empowerment.
Now we will see the global top 10, where Iceland is once again the most gender equal country in the world for the 11th in a row. It has closed almost 88% of its overall gender gap. Iceland is followed by Norway, Finland, and Sweden. Other economies in the top 10 are Nicaragua, New Zealand, Ireland, Spain, Rwanda, and Germany. Spain showed an important improvement due to the increased participation of women in political institutions. Now we will see that Iceland achieved successfully the dimensions in terms of health and education, and in economy and politics they exceed the average, but still they need to work, for example, in politics to reduce the 30% that left from the total percent. In the last position, was Yemen with a score of 50%, where in the health dimension they achieved the maximum score, but still in politic and economic dimension they need to work on that because in political empowerment the participation in women is only around 2%. Another fundamental aspect that contributes to the financial disparity, a part of economic participation, is the unpaid domestic work with activities like childcare, where women spend 62 hours per week and men 36. Other activities, housework, where women dedicate 23 hours per week and men 15. In any country, men spend the same amount of time on unpaid work as the women, and the countries that present the lowest ratio is still 2 to 1. Even in advanced economies such as Japan, the share of time that women spend is more than 4 times than of men. Women in companies board director, over one-third of women are board of directors in 10 countries, one-fifth in 12 countries, and one-tenth in 21 countries. In 2020, 28% of managers were women and 18 CEO. In terms of national parliaments, women are represented 25%, and in local government, 36. In terms of labor force participation, into 2020, men were more likely than women to participate in the labor force in countries around the world. Over the past 25 years, it has been mainly remained at 27% points of gender gap. Analyzing now specifically the most productive stage in life, that is between 25 and 54 age group. This group remained relatively stable, 32% point in 2020. That is the gender gap, and it just have been reduced 1% in the last 25 years. Now we are going to talk about some countries, as Deborah mentioned, according to the nationalities of people in our class. So Colombia is in the position 22nd, and the gender parity percent is 66%. It means that women are 24 less likely than men to have equal opportunities. In general terms, Colombia achieved successfully the dimension of health and education with the maximum score, but in politics and economic, they still do need continue generating opportunities and creating solutions to reduce that gap. The percent of women in companies as a board director is 15%, and in political empowerment, in the parliament is 19%, ministerial position 53%. On average, women's incomes represent 68% of the incomes received by men, and the gender wage inequality is 54%. Another important factor in this country is the violence against women. That is a common subject there, where with the lockdown and the pandemic, everything have getting worse, and the cases reported as well has been increased. However, in some case, the women and girls doesn't have the opportunity to report the cases due to they are living with their abusers.
So The Global Gender Gap Report identified that globally, and by contrast, differences between women and men remain significantly larger on political empowerment and economic participation and opportunity. And on political empowerment, where only 24.7% of the gap has been closed so far, and economic participation and opportunity, where only 59% of the gap has been closed so far. So this, in comparison to the other two dimensions, which are health and survival and education attainment, it's pretty low because both of them have closed over 90% of the gap so far. And bringing the attention to the other four countries that are represented in our classroom, we have that these two dimensions, political empowerment and economic participation, are the most significant. Because in the four countries, what they have in common is that there is a lack of participation, of women participation in the politics. So we have a lack of representation. And in terms of economic participation and opportunity, Brasilia, India, and Thailand, the three of them have this low participation. It's not really significant, but Nigeria shows a different context due to the fact that both women and men have low wages, um, lack of economic participation, and also they have a low labor workforce, which means that in terms of gender, parity is positive because both have the same opportunities, but in terms of human perspective, is not really positive because they have um, bad conditions of work. And also, as Catherine said, the violence against women um, has gotten worse due to the pandemic, but this has been a serious public health problem for ages. We have the violence against women as a violation of women's human rights, which is really serious. So the World Health of Organization brings the data about this, which 30% of women have been subjected to some type of violence in their lifetime. So mental, physical, or sexual abuse, it's really huge. And also 20% of women aged between 15 and 49 years old reported some physical and or sexual violence by their partner. So we need to change the scenario.
Hi, so I'm just going to bring you to Ireland and the society within Ireland. So Ireland is 7th out of 150 countries reviewed. So it is notably better than the other countries mentioned before. And the parity percentage is 79.6. Something to take note of is Ireland's economic participation and opportunity and its educational attainment. This is also notably better than the previous countries mentioned. So, society within Ireland. The Catholic Church has had a massive influence on the Irish people in recent times. One statistic that I found that really stuck out for me was the fact that the Catholic Church and the government implemented tariffs on international newspapers and magazines coming into Ireland so that Irish people wouldn't be exposed to the scandalous news that was happening outside of Ireland. This is just one example of how the church could influence the Irish people. Another example of what women endured in Ireland throughout recent years are the mother and baby homes. So women were admitted to mother and baby homes when they became pregnant, and they would be admitted into these homes because they failed to secure support from their family or the father of that child. They were forced to leave home and seek a place where they could stay for free. Examples of the terrible things that were happening within these homes were sexual abuse, mental abuse, and also the nuns were known for selling on the babies that the women had birthed. A report has been released this year, and it goes into gruesome detail of what actually happened in these homes and what the women endured during their stay here. Another good example is Magella Moynihan. She is a former Bangarda, which is a female police officer in Ireland. She was charged with 2 counts of misconduct under Garda discipline. One of them was having a sexual relationship with another male Garda, and the second one was giving birth to the baby. She was forced to give up this child for adoption and received massive judgment from her employer, colleagues, and society. She discussed the torture she endured in her book, which is called A Guarded Life. So this slide just depicts how women from low and middle income countries engage more in entrepreneurial activities than women from high income countries. Entrepreneurship is more of a need than an option for some women. So this infographic shows that women with high education tend to engage less in entrepreneurial activities. Apparently, they tend to experience the possibilities that emerge. However, women see the entrepreneurs as high and powerful position. According to women's entrepreneurship reports, they also reported having low confidence levels in their capabilities. And these 2 factors could add to the reason why women engage less in entrepreneurship, even if they are highly qualified for the job. So in the 2018-2019 Women's Entrepreneurship Reports, it identified that women are less confident in their capabilities and more likely to be deterred by failure. Studies show from Kickstarter that only 23% of projects in which men invested were led by women, and this can be credited to taste-based discrimination. So this picture here shows that women in developed countries tend to get involved in entrepreneurial activities due to the pursuance of opportunities, while women in developing countries get more involved in entrepreneurial activities due to the lack of opportunities. Mainland AL 2020 says that developed countries are driven by technology advances, which is a field that has a massive gender gap.
So given this context about women and entrepreneurship, how does diversity impact business? So research shows that diversity can boost profitability, culture, and public perception. So in terms of profitability, over 70% of companies, which includes diversity within their culture, has shown a boost in their financial performance. And also the culture is really important, especially nowadays for the millennials and perception, due to the fact that over 80% of people would like to work in a place that has diversity as a value. And the employee retention and engagement has improved as well. And finally, the public perception. People want to know who is behind the brand. So what are their values, what they want to really give importance, so diversity is in terms of gender, race, and culture and other aspects is really important to give the society the perception of how they interpret what they think about your brand. And also we have the how to contribute to gender parity. So according to the report that we used as the main source of our presentation, some actions must be taken, and 4 are the principal ones, which are increasing female labor force participation broadly and in selected sectors, So we have the fourth industrial revolution's job market, which jobs in tech, engineering, and communications are like the most expressed in within the fourth industrial revolution. So we need to encourage women to work in these fields. And also we need to increase the number of women in leadership positions. We need to show them that we can do it. Not only men, both can do it. And we need to close gaps as well in wage and remuneration. A data about Brazil, for instance, shows that men has 70, almost 76% of women's salary, like higher. So it's a huge gap that we need to close. And also we need to build parity in emerging high demand skills and jobs. Now I would like to invite Deborah to complement our recommendations.
Yeah, so I'm talking about the daily life recommendations. So we have here utilize more women as examples in distinctive fields and distinctive sectors, because this means representativeness, and representativeness strengthens encouragement and confidence. Promote decisions made by unanimity vote instead of majority. There is a study from Brigham Young University and Princeton University that they found that in a mixed table, the conversation is dominated by men in 75%. And it leads to decisions made without women's participation, mainly when we are talking about decisions made by majority vote. But when it comes to unanimity vote, the scenario change, because it empowers women to speak and give to them voice. Encourage women around you to speak up and listen to them. There is another study. This one's from University of California. No, sorry, from George Washington University. And in this study, they showed that men interrupt 33% more often when they are talking with a woman when they are talking with another man. Support the election of women for different positions in the government. As we saw during this presentation, the dimension of politics, it's one of the that we have the largest gap. And the participation in politics, the increase in the participation of women in politics means the increase of policies to diminish the gap. Approach and address gender imparity into universities. We know that from university that we have our most qualified workforce. So we have to discuss this subject in university to show how this can impact in the business, how it can impact negatively, but if you promote gender parity, it can be a massive advantage as well.
Yeah, the other recommendations going further, we based in the gender gap life cycle. So we have three main actions that need to be taken, which are develop active policies such as maternity, paternity, and parental leaves. So we need to make sure that women and men have like equal opportunities in this scenario. And also we need to develop awareness and empowerment initiatives. So people must to know about what's going on. It's what we are doing here. And also we need to empower women, female leadership, women that achieve great goals. And finally, we need to set targets and monitor them. We need to set clear objectives within a company and institution, and gather the data to see how is the progress, to see where we are going. So it's really important to do this. So here you can meet our lovely team, which is composed by Melissa, Deborah, Larissa, Catherine, and Juan Riza. We have our LinkedIn's page here, so you feel welcome to reach out to us, and we will be more than happy to answer any questions. Thank you.